Ladies and gentlemen, Lily Isobella.
Well done. Hello, hello. Well, TEDx almost didn't happen for me. A few weeks ago, I jumped in quite late to the journey and I met up with the organisers and some of the fabulous speakers that you've had today. And I sat with them, and first of all, I was completely inspired by their passion and by their excitement and by their knowledge. And so I went, yes, I want in. And then I was completely in awe of their enthusiasm and their passion and their enormous knowledge. And then I was completely overwhelmed by their passion and their enthusiasm and their enormous knowledge. And I stood there and I said to myself, oh my God, what have I done? What on earth can I possibly bring to the table in the face of all of this? I'm me. What the hell am I going to talk about? And so, me being me and doing what I do, I had a tantrum and I pulled out. And I sat with that for a week, feeling sorry for myself, feeling very much like I had absolutely nothing to offer the world. I'm sure you've all been familiar with that feeling at some point in time. Until I had a conversation with a delicious friend a few days ago. And he said, oh, you know, that's a shame you pulled out. I went, yes. And he goes, so tell me, what were you going to talk about? I said, oh, you know, well, I had this great talk all about personal responsibility and what each of us can bring to the table, our unique expression of ourselves. And I was going to be really inspiring and I was going to be amazing. And he just went, oh, isn't that interesting? And yet you have nothing to offer. And so I quickly and hastily jumped back in and went, actually I do, I have something to say. Because I realised in that moment that the only thing I have to offer is the same thing that each of us has to offer in this incredible community, and that's ourselves. Our unique, amazing, beautiful, incredible, and totally individual expression of ourselves. I'm really honoured, I feel honoured every day to live in this place, and I know most of you do too. We live in one of the most evolved and passionate and committed communities in Australia, I think. And the thing about living in a community like that is that it attracts similar people. Bellingen was built with this real ethos of planetary commitment and sustainability. And we drag people from all corners of the globe to participate in that. And because of that, we've got this really well-developed framework of sustainable housing, sustainable food, sustainable health, medicine, employment, government policy. We have an incredible framework already built, and the only thing we have to do is show up. So what are you showing up with? Day in, day out, when you come to this place, what are you showing up with? Are you showing up with your most brilliant and vibrant self? Can you honestly say that day in, day out, you bring your very best self to the table? Your most evolved self in this present moment? We've all got skills, right? Everybody's skill set's different. I have quite an unusual skill set that served me very well growing up. I can hold my breath underwater for an inordinately long time. I can run really fast and I can hide in tiny, tiny places. I also have a wicked right hook, but it's my sneaky left you've got to keep an eye on. Now, this served me well because I grew up as the only girl in a house for wayward boys. So you can imagine the need to hide in small places was crucial for me to actually be standing here as a grown-up. Now, I grew up with my grandmother. She was an amazing woman, barely 5 foot tall, tough as nails. This is a woman you did not mess with. And she took it upon herself to start taking in boys that everybody had given up on. The naughty boys, the boys with drug problems, the boys with drinking problems, the boys with girl problems. And she created a community. No government funding back then, she just fed them, she housed them. She created a framework in which these boys were allowed to experience a little bit of magic. Now, there were rules, but the main rule was you showed up and you brought your best self to that place. because lo bloody hell, you did not want to bring your second best self to that woman, because I tell you what, she was standing there with a wooden spoon or a rolled up newspaper and you were going to get it. Now, being 5 foot tall, working with very tall boys, usually when one of the boys would show up half cut, stoned, usually pissed, it was the 70s, she would stand on a kitchen chair and she would whack them repeatedly over the head. "I've told you about this." And there was one incident that stands out so strongly in my memory, where this boy, David, had come home yet again, drunk. And instead of doing her usual thing of getting up on the chair and giving him what for, she stood very quietly and she just did this. She leaned up and she took him by the collar. She pulled him way, way, way down to her level. And she said, "Son, it's time to shit or get off the pot. It's your choice." And of course, I was 7 at the time. I'm sitting there going, "Pooh, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Just get the wooden spoon out and whack him, for God's sake." But like most of my grandmother's infinite wisdom, it took me years to come to understand the beautiful thing that she was actually saying to this person. So, Bellingen and all our visitors, you have a framework. You have an amazing opportunity. So I'm going to challenge you that it may be your turn to shit or get off the pot. Now, for those of you not familiar with this beautiful colloquialism, which I actually thought was Australian, but we have the English to thank for it, Wikipedia define this as a statement used to imply that a person should follow up their stated intentions with action. That by failing to do so, they're actually preventing others from acting. You've only got to be at my house at 8 o'clock every morning to understand that sharing a bathroom with 3 boys, you bet your life you're preventing me if you don't hurry up. So, what does it look like? What does it look like when you decide to show up with your whole self? When you make a commitment to be part of this framework and actively bring in your absolute best self to evolve personally. How does that happen? Can anybody do it? Do you just wake up one day and go, I'm an evolved human being? I tried that. That's how I ended up dropping out of TEDx in the first place. It doesn't work very well. I've talked to lots of people. I've had the joy of working with incredibly inspiring people, and there seems to be a few key things that all of them say that are important to do day in, day out, again and again and again, to be on a path of personal evolution. So I'm going to give you the top 4 really fast. Number 1, look after your health. You've only got to look at the state of our healthcare system and look at the figures and realise that $140 billion was spent last year on health. That's not preventative healthcare, that's post-disease healthcare. To understand that looking after your health is not only great economic sense, it's probably going to save your life somewhere down the track. The fact that we have a study called the Global Burden of Disease that's been running since 2010 says to me that if you're not actively looking after your health and taking responsibility for that, you're not calling yourself an evolved person. You're adding to the burden. And let's face it, you get one of these. I could actually do with some modifications, but I've got one and it works and it's good. And it's not like you get halfway through your journey and go, actually I screwed mine up, can I have another one please? You get one physical body. Look after it. This is the vehicle that's going to bring in the work you're on this planet to do. Number 2 is to learn every day, every single day. There's not a day that goes by that evolving people don't learn something. And I'm not talking about going back to uni, and I'm not talking about reading books, even though they're fantastic things to do, but I'm talking about having a childlike sense of wonder when you approach this world. Have you ever watched kids? There's a story I love about taking children for a walk, and as adults we'll walk from A to B. Kids will walk from A to Z because they will ask questions every step of the way. Ask questions. Learn something about the place where you are living and the world in which you're living and the state in which you're living every single day. Number three, pursue your dreams. Now, growing up, with being a child of coming into my adulthood in the 90s and the and the birth of all this fabulous New Age wisdom, I was beaten to death almost with the, "You're unique and there's only one of you." And after a while, I think, like most people, I stopped listening. I'd heard it too often. But I'm going to say to you today, there's only one of you. Nobody else on the face of the planet is ever going to have your genetic makeup. Nobody else on the face of the planet is going to have your set of dreams that you bring in. And nobody else is going to have your skill set. And more importantly, nobody is ever going to have the same combination of those three things. So I say to you, pursue that dream that drives you every day. Some days you're going to win, some days you're going to lose. Some days it's going to be great, and some days it's going to be shit. But you must chase that spark every single day, regardless of how it feels. And finally, the one thing that you can do that all people who are on a path to being evolved, bringing their best self forth, is to have a spirituality. Now, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about asking your soul, your spirit, the complete part of you, the essence of you, asking that part of you to come and be in your journey. Now, having a spiritual practice may be that you have a religious practice. It may be that you go forest bathing every day. It may be that you have a mindful sit. It may be in the way that you communicate. But unless you ask your entire self, the very essence of you, to show up on this journey, it's never going to happen. And it's only when we have a community filled with these people who actually show up with their whole self, committed to bringing forth and evolving their whole self, that we actually start to have an evolved community. And then, who knows, my God, an evolved planet. Imagine what that would look like. Can you imagine? Can you imagine living in a community filled with people who are authentic and congruent and healthy and vibrant and amazing and pursuing their dreams? And it sounds like Bellingen. It's possible. Can you imagine living on a planet that was like that? Can you imagine being that person right now? Close your eyes. Imagine being that person, living your most evolved potential, being congruent, being authentic, showing up, being brilliant. Because really, this is what excites me about this. You don't have to wait for a government to make this a policy. You don't have to wait to be able to afford to do this. You don't have to wait for something outside of you to change to do this. You just have to get up in the morning, open your eyes, make a decision. And that decision, that is where we start to see the evolution of our community.